What is it about Ferrari that makes people so desperate to buy one? Well, in part, it's the sound. Ferrari has spent decades doing research into the perfect sound for a Ferrari that has a huge amount of meaning for its users. They have an acoustic engineering department that uses sophisticated simulators in order to get just the right sound. And it's a sound that other car manufacturers try to imitate by using amplifiers and so on, but it's actually built into the design of a Ferrari. Now, how is it that Ferrari happens to know that that particular sound makes turns their drivers on? Well, they do it by actually talking to drivers, not just surveying them, but actually listening to what it is they have to say, because you won't get that kind of information through a quantitative survey alone. So that's the subject of today's research overview. It's this idea that what we're doing in design is looking for insight, and you can't always get to that through the conventional quantitative methods that businesses often use. There are broadly two different types of research. One is in marketing or in design. One is what's called quantitative research, and that's surveys and essentially research that gives you numbers. The other is called qualitative research, and that's things like focus groups and individual depth interviews. And that gives you not numbers, but stories. And so quantitative research is all about prediction, validation, confirming hypotheses and that sort of thing. And so what you're doing is you're going out, you're doing surveys, you're collecting data, and you're putting all that data together to say, okay, well, X% of people will buy this new product. Qualitative research is different. Qualitative research is all about asking why, right? So understanding the underlying meaning of things. You might already know that X% of people will buy this new product, but you don't actually know why. And qualitative research can give you some hints and ways of getting at that. Now, quantitative research is very much about sort of hard numbers, about objectivity, about the idea that you're really, you have to establish what you think is happening beforehand, and you use the research to confirm or deny that. Qualitative research is much more formative. It's you're actually forming the model as you go in. You might go in knowing nothing about the situation. And what qualitative research can do is help you to really understand what is going on beneath the surface. So it's all about creating meanings, and you establish validity in different ways from quantitative research. So validity in quantitative research is through statistical tests of reliability and validity. In the case of qualitative research, it's through things like triangulation, which is using a bunch of different information sources, through representation, which is making sure that your sample covers the major groups, through saturation, making sure that the information you're getting from people is consistent, and through member checking, which is going back to users to the respondents to make sure that you're getting things right. So it's a much more of an emergent method emergent in the sense that it's always changing, than quantitative research, which is pretty much when you go into it, you have certain objectives and goals for the kind of information you're going to get, and you get it. Whereas qualitative, that can shift as you go along. Should you use qualitative or quantitative? And the answer to that is yes. You should use both because they're complementary. If what you want to do is estimate things or validate things or predict, then you would use quantitative. Examples: how many people would, or what percentage of people would buy a new drug? 52%, that's a number, right? That's what you get from quantitative research. Are Donald Trump's popularity ratings increasing or declining? That's a number or a series of numbers. How many students read the readings before class? 100%, of course. If you want to explain things or understand what's going on underneath the surface or find meaning, then what you're looking at is qualitative. What are people looking for in a new car? Is it a sound? Is it a way from getting from A to B? Is it reliability? Maybe you just don't know going in. So a good way to do that is to just listen to what they have to say about your car. There's a really interesting study I did a few years ago about South Asian households, and the odd fact that there are dishwashers in many South Asian households, but they're not used. And it turned out in that study that hand dishwashing offered an opportunity for mothers and daughters to talk to each other and away from the rest of the family. And so that there was value for that sort of bonding. But we didn't know that going in. It was something that we found out just by talking to people and getting their stories. Or what might be the meaning of the first cup of coffee in the morning? For some people, it's fuel to get them started during the day. For other people, it's their special moment when they have to themselves. For other people, it might be an opportunity to meet with a friend and talk with them. So the meanings and the causes and the experiences are all the subject of qualitative research, and they work together. Because what you can do with qualitative research, for instance, is develop a model of the world and develop a hypothesis, which is then validated through quantitative research, or vice versa. If you do quantitative research and you don't understand why you're getting the results that you're getting, qualitative can get you a bit closer to an explanation. Here are some important words that come up and themes that come up in qualitative research. Things like culture, lived experience, interaction, social interaction, perception, how do people see things, empathy between the researcher and the respondent, how do people behave? You can observe people and watch what they're doing unconsciously. What are the emotions underlying experiences? Where does social status come into it? Metaphors, subjective meaning, and language. All of these concepts are a big issue in qualitative research. It might be interesting for you to look at the video called the Harley-Davidson Creed. I'd suggest you Google it. The link is up there on the slide too. You can copy it down. It's probably easier just to Google it. Harley-Davidson Creed. Have a look at it. And what you'll see there is the elements of a religion, right? So that what's happening in that video is that Harley riders are kind of stating what they believe in. And so the idea is they're not just riding a bike to get to work. What they're doing is making an expression of their values and the things that they hold in common. So there's something very tribal about it. And so that's what so products and services have meanings, and that's what qualitative research is so good at unearthing. A bike, as we said, could be a religion, and that's so you can. And when I talked about metaphor a moment ago, religion is a metaphor for a lot of for Harley-Davidson users. Or another one, a glass of milk is so much more than a drink. Years ago, the California Milk Processing Board was concerned about the steady decline in the consumption of milk. Now, there are all these positive associations with milk that they had been advertising over the years: motherhood nostalgia, how milk was, from the farm, and it was real, lots of cows in a lot of the advertising. But at the same time, milk was potentially boring and everyday. You could advertise it on the basis of the vitamins. Maybe it helps you feel nourished. But the one that really popped out as the California Milk Processing Board was doing its research was it was an essential companion to some foods. So in other words, this was through focus groups, they found that if you're having a peanut butter sandwich, you had to have it with milk. Or if you're having an Oreo cookie, you had to have it with milk. Imagine trying to have cereal without milk. So it was kind of this essential companion. So what they did was they created this advertising campaign called Got Milk. And if you Google Got Milk, you'll find there's some very funny commercials in there. But the basic idea is that they said, what would the world be like without milk? And you've got people waking up and having nothing to put on their cereal, et cetera, et cetera. And so they created humor out of that. And that actually was very effective in turning around milk consumption in California at the time. And so that then the observation here was there's some times with Oreo cookies, for example, that you simply can't do without milk. You have to have milk, right? And the insight there is that milk is more than just a drink. It's got this other meaning, right? It's kind of this essential companion. Another observation that they found was that people ration milk. So what happens is that when the milk gets low in the fridge, people would say, "Oh well, don't use the milk right now for your coffee because we're going to need it for cereal in the morning," right? And so the insight there was that milk is, yeah, it's essential. It's an essential companion to foods, but it's also boring. It's also forgettable. Right. And so part of the campaign then was to do things like bus shelters and remind people while they're out, oh, got to get milk on the way home. And so it wasn't just a TV campaign, but it was also a campaign that was on billboards and throughout cities in order to have that reminder effect. So this is just the first introductory lecture in research. So, and really what I wanted to do is to give you a sense of the differences between quantitative or qualitative. So you can test yourself on these. One is, how about this one? We have an idea for a new barbecue sauce. We want to find out what percentage of consumers like the flavor, quantitative or qualitative. Our research has shown that 20% of parents bathe their babies several times a day. We don't know why, but we'd like to find out. Quantitative or qualitative? We want to know how often people eat at Japanese restaurants, what they order and what they think of the ambience. Quantitative or qualitative? We've developed a lifestyle segmentation of the home renovation market. We want to explore what differences in behavior might exist across segments, quantitative or qualitative, and we're thinking of adding massage therapy to our chiropractic practice. We'd like to know how much our patients would be prepared to pay for this service, quantitative or qualitative. So that wraps it up on this introductory lecture for design research. And you'll find that there are a number of other lectures around things like ethnography, observation, interviewing, all of which will be very useful and practical to as you go forward.